Alright guys, so this is going to be a video of the Christmas market with my disembodied voice over the top, doing a little Q&A. I'll also comment on some of this footage that I took as I go along, so welcome. This is actually in Red Square, and I will intersperse this video with some photography I took on that day. I thought I'd just show you what Christmas is like in Moscow. Yeah. So I asked on Instagram for some questions that people would like to know, and I've done this a few times over the past few months, and I've sort of compiled them, and I'm going to answer some questions as I comment on the video you're watching. I'll also leave some background noise in from Christmas market so you can kind of feel the atmosphere. You can also see, if you look on the floor here, that it was snowing, but there's almost never any sign of snow in Red Square. It's always cleaned super quick. And you can see all these stores of people selling their tat to unsuspecting tourists, Russians and foreigners alike. As we walk through this, I will talk you through it, and yeah, so let's start on some questions. So the first question I got asked was, I want to know your opinion about Russian people, their habits and so on. It's an interesting question. I've been here for quite a while now, and I can say that Russian people are not that dissimilar to British people in many ways. I mean, they're kind, they're hospitable, that's not a problem. There's lots of stereotypes about them being particularly cold, which in my experience is not that true. Many of them are often shy or not self-confident, and it takes a while to get to know someone before they'll tell you stories about their life and things like that. But overall, I didn't find people to be cold like the stereotype is. And their habits, I'm not really sure what to answer, but I very much enjoyed being around Russian people on a daily basis. Everyone's always very interested in me, very kind to me, asking why on earth I'm in Russia, what I'm doing here. Yeah. So if you see ahead here, this is the GUM shopping centre, full of luxury shops and so on. It's pretty expensive actually inside there, and it's actually lit up like this year round. This is not a Christmas thing for this shopping centre, not like Harrods in London, for example, which is only lit up certain parts of the year. And right outside its front door they have the GUM market, which is this. Yep, you see the Christmas trees and the various rides, and there's also a ice skating rink, which you'll see later. Okay, so another question. What's the biggest difference between Russian and British people? Okay, another interesting question. I tend to find that British people are a lot more reserved in what they'll say to you when they don't really know you. So, for example, if someone's got fat in Russia, someone will say, "Oh, you've got fat," or "You got a spot on your face." They'll say, "Oh, you got a spot on your face now." That happens a lot in Russia, where in Britain there's a lot more focus on, I guess, politeness, on not wanting to offend people. Oh, here we can see someone cooking pancakes. Yeah, very popular this time of year. Drink some mulled wine and eat some pancakes, and if you wait a minute you'll see a photo. Here we go, yeah, a photo of someone serving pancakes. Okay, so biggest difference between Russian and British people, yeah. Russian people are much more straightforward, I find. They will, they don't really, I won't say they don't consider people's feelings, but the culture is not to beat around the bush a little bit more. Whereas in Britain, everything's a little bit more reserved. You get someone's opinion, you'll take their feelings in mind and maybe won't even answer honestly. Says, do I look good in this dress? Or do I look fat today? Or something. You say, no, you look perfect. Everything's always so, not dishonest, but maybe toned down a little bit. Where in Russia I don't find it the same way. That's what I would say is the biggest difference between British and Russian people. Okay, there's people asking me to break some stereotypes. Yes, there's no bears in Moscow. Historical things, well, people talk about Russia's economical history. One thing I love about Russia in general is that in the last 101 years, if you think about it, Russia's gone from having a Tsar, a king, to revolution with Lenin and Stalin, and then the whole of the Soviet Union, go all the way up to Gorbachev, Perestroika, and then changing to Yeltsin, and then Putin, and then Medvedev for a little bit in the middle. The thing is that that's a huge amount of change, going through loads of different political systems in such a short time, which something that the likes of Britain or the USA doesn't have. It's the same political system basically as it was 100 years ago. In the UK they have the Queen as a figurehead, and the USA and the Prime Minister, and in the USA they have a president. Here we see a video. This is a samovar where you can for drinking tea out of, very popular in Russia. So we're coming to the end of the market here on this video. Here you can see some meat that's being cooked. I really like this picture. You see the steam coming off it, the smoke coming off it, sorry. I'm going to exit this market now. I'm going to walk towards a different square, Nizhny Ploshad, just next to Red Square. But first we'll go and walk through Red Square. Okay, another question. Something that's confusing or shocking in Russia, which I faced during living here. I mean, I used to live in St. Petersburg, an exchange student, so I'm pretty to terms with Russia and living here. I mean, one thing I thought before I came to Moscow is that more people would be able to speak English here, especially as the capital. I know people call St. Petersburg a cultural capital and it's more European facing, but I expected Moscow, especially with the World Cup coming up and a lot more tourists, that especially it's been the capital of the whole country, that I'd see much more people speaking English, but it's not the case. I can even go to a Starbucks, for example, and try and order a drink in English, and the person there doesn't speak English or has to go to, say, bring over another person working there to talk to me in English, which I found particularly surprising. Yes, I think that's more confusing than shocking. What else? Actually, on the subject of speaking English, I always find in restaurants, if you start off by speaking English, maybe you can throw in some Russian later if they don't understand, but you tend to get served better. Maybe it's because they want a bigger tip and they think you're foreign tourist, maybe you have more money, I'm not sure, but I found that tends to be the case. Okay, another question. Some stereotypes about us that prove to be true or not? I think Russians have created their own stereotypes in a weird way. I think when you talk to British people about Russia, they don't really have stereotypes. I mean, I think they'll probably talk about vodka as a stereotype, or maybe ice hockey or something. But people don't walk around thinking about Russia that often. The only real things they see about Russia are in the news about international relations or something, maybe Soviet things. Stereotypes, let me think. I mean, a lot of Russian people, they've created their own stereotype. Like, they talk about, partying like a Russian, things like this, which has been a completely bizarre thing to me. As a student in Britain, I noticed the drinking culture a lot bigger than I have here. Here, students or young people tend to go out on Fridays and Saturdays. And when I was a student in the UK, it could be Friday, Saturday, Wednesday, and another day. So I've noticed that stereotype doesn't really ring true. What else? People being cold, I've talked about that already. People talking about Russia being a communist country, which could not be further from the truth. It's absolutely dominated by capitalism now, whether you think that's good or bad. What else? I don't know. I'd like to generally avoid the subject of politics here, but lots of Western people do have opinions about Russian people and their views on politics, or rather things they consider to be ignorance. But maybe I'll get onto that in another video, but maybe later. Okay, so here we see the ice skating rink. Ice skating, of course, very popular in Russia. I've not been skating here. I mean, in fact, it's probably 10 years since I last went ice skating, so I'm a little bit scared to try. I would be like this guy pulling myself around. Where you can see it's quite big, pretty popular. It's quite expensive here in the centre, of course. And you can see the entrance to the shopping centre, Gum. And we'll continue to walk through Red Square, having a look at the Christmas. This was filmed after Christmas. It's actually filmed in second week of January. So people's Christmas spirit has sort of died. As you can see, it's not so busy. During the Christmas period, which would probably be in Russia, would be January 1st to January 7th, but even maybe starting late December, it was really, really, really busy. Like queuing for a while to get some mulled wine and things like this. But Moscow has Christmas markets all over. Almost every main square, every corner has some sort of market or some tree or something, so it's really Christmassy atmosphere. You can see all these trees, they're dotted around everywhere. In fact, there's a lot more coming up. Okay, next question. Difficulties you can expect for people moving to Britain? Oh no, I'll answer that in another question. Okay, let's keep going. Friendships, is it easier to make friends, socialise? I found it is quite easy to socialise. Mainly because people are interested in me for being a foreigner in Russia. It's not a normal place where people aspire to come and live, I guess. And people often say to me, why are you here? I love London, or it's my dream to go to London. Why on earth would you come to live in Russia? I get that a lot. Which makes an easy lead in to have a conversation, and then when you have a conversation, you can become friends. That's generally how life works, of course. So I found making friends and socialising to be quite easy. The internet, of course, helps with that too. It's easy just to message someone and say, do you want to hang out? And then if you go to a bar or something and someone hears you speaking English, say, oh, where are you from? Why are you here? I guess that's the main ways I've made friends here. Yeah. What do Russians do in their free time? Russians are the same as everybody else, really. Especially in Moscow, actually. I don't want to say Russians in general. I'm talking about Moscow and St. Petersburg and other big cities throughout the country. Because in the suburbs, in like smaller villages, of course, it's very different. But people in Moscow and St. Petersburg and all the other big cities are the same. Okay, now we're walking here down to Nikolskaya, which is a beautiful, beautiful street. And they have a really long stretch of these lights which hang down from the top. Which basically go as far as the eye can see when you're down here, as you can see all the way to the end, all the way to Lubyanka Square. And it's just lights hanging down. Very popular photo spot. In fact, there was a photo of Alexei Navalny walking down here a few weeks ago, walking to the Kremlin. And also during the New Year celebrations on TV, there was like a music video filmed down here for a couple singers singing a song. Okay. Why did I choose to learn the Russian language? Okay, that's an interesting question. I did German in high school, and I was pretty good at German. I did it at A-level, which is the exams you do from 16 to 18 in the UK, and I found it at the start challenging, but then quite easy, and I wanted to learn a second language. I was going to university in London. I wanted to choose a second language. I thought about Spanish. I thought about French. I mean, I went through a list of lots of different languages, and I eventually chose Russian because it's a incredibly important language for geopolitics, for business. And as an English person, as an English native speaker, there's not that many English native speakers, especially British English native speakers, who can speak Russian fluently, or Russian at all. So I decided I'm going to give Russian a go, and when my Russian gets great, I've really carved out a niche for myself as an English and Russian speaker. Yeah, and also because I absolutely adore Russian literature. As you could hear before, I have a great fondness for Russian history too. So yeah, that's why I chose the Russian language, and some days I regret it because it's really hard, but other times I'm very happy because I love the country. Do I understand? Have I come to understand Russian soul, Russian mentality? That's an interesting question. I think Russian soul is something which Russian people are obsessed about. I'll give you an example. When I talk to Russian people about some of my favourite Russian movies, they'll say, "Oh yes, it's got a real Russian soul in it." "Oh no, I don't like it. It hasn't got a Russian soul." Or they'll talk about maybe in comparison to Hollywood, say, "Yeah, I like Russian movies because they have that Russian soul." This is something which is interesting for English people to look at. It also comes up in literature too. I understand what people are talking about, but then again, like I said before, I don't really think Russia's that different to lots of other Western countries. I know geographically it's placed between the West and the East, and almost the mentality is somewhere between the West and the East too. But the Russian soul, I don't think it's that different, to be honest. Mentality is a tricky question for me. Russian mentality is completely different to my mentality. I've adapted, I've come to learn and things like this, but I will always struggle to. I'll never become a Russian, is what I'm trying to say. The mentality will never change. My mentality will never change. But I understand it. But there's some things about Russian mentality which are still very 50 years ago UK or 50 years ago USA. So yeah, younger people are different. I think young Russians are very Western, like almost no difference. Older ones have a bit of difference. Like their mind is 50 years in the past, basically stuck in the Soviet Union lots of the time. But yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question. Okay, how do I like herring under a fur coat? Okay, herring under a fur coat is, for people who don't know, is a Russian food, common during New Year celebrations. And I'm not really a fish person, to be honest. I know it's weird coming from a Brit. I do like fried fish and chips. I'm trying to stay away from fried food. I'm not really into herring, to be honest. Google herring under a fur coat. It's interesting food stuff. Food stuff? That's not the right word. Interesting meal. Yeah. But how do I like it? I'm sorry, I can't really answer that. I don't really know. Alright, where are we on this video? Okay, so this is Menezhnaya Ploshchad. This is just full of trees, and as you can see here, people selling food. Really nice. Carnival rides. It's a really beautiful area of Moscow, especially with all these trees here. It's completely different to how it normally looks. Although this square always has something in it. There's lots of World Cup stuff going on, of course. And during the autumn, there was like an autumn festival thing here. There's always music, and it's right next to a huge Four Seasons hotel, which is a very popular hotel here in Moscow. You can see lots of people here taking photos from the trees, families coming out. Yeah, it's a really nice area. Okay, let's move on to maybe one more question before we get to the end. So the most annoying thing about Moscow. The most annoying thing about Moscow. I don't know. I used to think the metro was annoying, that the same stations can have multiple names, but I got over that very quickly. Probably the acceptable times of commutes, and how people are just happy to travel for such a long time to get to work. And it's people talk about Moscow being a city of fast-paced people, and yeah, the centre's obviously fast, like London. But people are more than happy to travel for 2 hours to get to the centre, and they expect you to be happy to travel an hour to get somewhere. Where I just think it's crazy. An hour to get there, and then to work for an hour, then an hour to come back. That's 3 hours, and you paid for 1 hour. That's probably the most annoying thing about Moscow. But of course, that's the thing about being a big city. I never really felt that annoyance in London, to be honest. All right, what else? Okay, final question. What do you prefer? To drink a bottle of vodka on Red Square, or eat a jar of Marmite near Big Ben? Marmite is absolutely disgusting. I'm not into Marmite at all, so I have to take the vodka on Red Square, although I'm not really a vodka person either. Drinking or even the smell of vodka gives me flashback to terrible student days. Although I have to say, I think Red Square is more beautiful than Big Ben. Big Ben obviously is just one. It's actually a bell inside a tower, for those who don't know. But just the building is obviously it's very nice. But I think Red Square is nicer. With all the buildings and the churches and things like that. It's a much more interesting place. Okay, so thanks for the questions, everybody. That's me done. Thanks for watching, and Happy New Year.
It's slow.